gonna do, you can see, this is not a wig on this guy, I don't think. I'm gonna unmute real quick. You guys let me know if you can hear it.
Progress going forward, and that we're
Yeah.
still on track
can hear
for
it?
rate cuts.
Okay, cool. So I'm just gonna keep that mute. We got literally seconds here, 50 seconds, and we're gonna find out what the Fed's gonna do. And then at 2:30 p.m., Jerome Powell will come out, and that's probably when the market will really start moving. The expectations right now is for everything to remain as is, no rate hike, no rate cut. But the most notable thing is that we'll get a new projection, and it was projected for 1.5 cuts for the rest of 2024. With today's CPI, it should come out at 2 expected rates for the rest of 2024. So pretty big deal. So I'll go ahead and unmute here. We got 15 seconds left, and yeah, I'll let Herbert and anyone else
In terms
talk.
of inflation,
Why don't
a
I-
little bit of relief
Go
this
ahead.
morning.
Oh,
And I'm looking.
Oh, well, I was just going to say this is a big deal. If rates go up, that's problematic for the market. It makes a cost of borrowing more expensive. That makes manufacturing more expensive. That makes it more expensive for consumers. What we'd really like to see is a rate cut, and we will at some point. But the expectation is that that day is not today. Thank you, everybody in the live chat, for letting us know your thoughts and what's going on, and keep it coming.
Right. And it should be coming any second now. Let's see what happens. Someone's got to keep an eye out on Tesla too. See if it moves up anymore. All right, let's unmute here.
In September.
I said 20 seconds, and you hit it on the nose. Thank you very much, David. We'll get back to you in just a little bit. And meantime, let's go to Steve Leisman now for the Fed's eagerly awaited decision on interest rates.
The Federal Reserve in its June meeting leaving interest rates unchanged and continues to say that it won't be appropriate to cut interest rates until it's gained confidence that it's headed towards its 2% target. The Fed on average now projecting 1 rate cut this year, down from 3 in the March forecast. 4 officials, in fact, are projecting no cuts this year, up from only 2 in March. One official actually says no cuts this year or next year, no cuts for you. They are projecting 5 cuts through 2025, which is down only 1. So they kind of get it done over the same period of time. Just the near-term cutting is much less. And I'll get back to that in a second. On average, they projected higher Fed funds rates this year and next. And of course, interestingly, in the long run, the neutral or long run rate now up another 0.2 now to 2.8 from 2.6%. They only accounted for the recent progress with this morning's low inflation, by the way, along with the good numbers in April, saying there has been modest further progress towards the Fed's 2% target on inflation. They had noted a lack of further progress in the March report. GDP outlook unchanged at 2.1% this year, 2% next year. The Fed saying economic activity continues to expand at a modest pace, same language it used in the May statement. Unemployment rate forecast was unchanged at 4% this year, a tick higher for next year than had previously been forecast at 4.1%. That's, of course, interesting because we're already at 4%.
Okay. That's pretty much the gist of it. Hawkish, very hawkish from the Fed. The fact that they are projecting 1 rate cut this year, we were at 1.5, and the fact that they're kind of dismissing today's cooler number. I think this is the Fed using their voice to influence the markets. That's arguably the strongest, muscle they have is just using their voice. So I think the market will probably eventually see through this, but it'd be interesting to see if we're in the red all of a sudden.
Okay, thank you so much for that update, Nick. Later, when Powell is up and talking, and we'll hear what he says verbally, right? What he says matters more than just sometimes, but it's unchanged. So there's several big announcements. First of all, this, we just covered the Fed. Then there is ARK Invest. They dropped their research. We're going to walk you through every graph, every comment that they make, what they're expecting for Tesla's robotaxi. And then also tomorrow is the shareholder meeting. We'll do a live stream of that as well. So thank you very much. We're co-streaming this on all of our channels. You got Brian White at Future Aza. You got Nick Gibbs at Investing Against the Grain. So let's jump to ARK Invest. Kathy Wood dropped this yesterday. And then from there, we can break away if we hear more breaking news. So you've got them talking about the expected value for Tesla. They've now bumped it to $2,600 per share, although they pushed it from 2027 to 2029. let's take a look at what they are expecting here. But Elon Musk posted this that in his opinion, Elon said that ARK Invest has been the most accurate predictors of the value of Tesla. And he did reply again this morning saying extremely challenging but achievable. So this is what they published. They have an expected value. They have this Monte Carlo approach of probabilities, and the expected based on that probability analysis is that by 2029, you're going to get the Tesla stock to be at $2,600 per share. But if you look at the bear value, bear value is 2,000, guys. That's the bear. And the bull is $3,100. Let me pause there. What you guys think? And then you can see the probability of a bear is 25% and the probability of the bull is 25%. So that then means that the expected value is 50% chance that we're going to hit this number. But boy, even the bear being 2,000 by 2029. Yeah.
I would say that ARK Invest was right, but for the wrong reasons. Their valuation, when they said it's going to 2,000, and it did, that it was, and that's pre-split. The reason that it went so high wasn't because of the reasons they assumed. They thought that robotaxi would already be out. They thought that there would already be revenue on that front, that autonomy would be solved by a couple of years ago. Or certainly by now, certainly to hit that $2,000 valuation. So while they got the right number, the math that they did to get there was crazy. If you look at the Monte Carlo that they did, so for those who don't know what it is, you take every possible outcome imaginable, you put it in and you assign probabilities to each of them, and then you crunch it and see what the final number is. If you look at some of the assumptions in there, back in, I want to say it was 2018 when they put that together, there were possibilities that they were seeing where they would be selling 80 million cars. It's like, I don't understand how that made it into there as one of the possible outcomes. The probability of that is zero. I mean, it's not low, it's zero. And that artificially bumps up everything else in the equation when you're including numbers that don't make sense. So I love Kathy Wood. I love Tasha Keeney, but I don't always agree with their assessments. And especially when you see the times when they buy and sell Tesla shares, and I know they want to keep their fund at around 10% weight of Tesla, it doesn't always line up with what I see as the execution reality. Now, I know they're trading, so they've got different realities to consider that include things like sentiment rather than execution, but I just don't always agree with them. And I think their bear case of 2,000 would be fantastic. I don't know many people who think the bear case 5 years out is more than 10x what it is today. That would be pretty magical, but it would make them, their bear case has them being the largest company in world history. And I'm just not sure that that's supported.
I think, Nick.
I haven't had a chance to look at all the inputs into Monte Carlo and what those kind of variables were. When I was reading through it quickly, I think they said they had like 45 or something, maybe it was 70 inputs into the Monte Carlo algorithm. And what I was thinking was, what if you're not putting the right ones in there? What if you're putting the wrong ones in there? That's hard with that type of system to come up with a price. So keep that in mind, just a caveat. But in general, I think this is probably going to become true, assuming that we get robotaxis out there. I mean, I don't know if you guys ever do this, but sometimes I'll just sit there on my phone and I'll just do some basic math. Like, all right, well, what happens if they have 10 million robotaxis? And well, what if they only charge for half of what Uber is? Okay, well, half those miles are garbage. And you start doing the math and you start to see what the revenue looks like. And you put like a 20 PE, a 30 PE, a 40 PE. And to Brian's point, like the numbers actually kind of pan out, into the same thing. So I don't know what attributes to it. I think it's all about road taxi. Yeah, it happens or it doesn't. Or Herbert, I think you said the other day, what's going to happen first, Optimus or robotaxi, right? Is that like back, in debate? But I think this is a very exciting 48 hours between CPI this morning, the Fed meeting about to start in 30 minutes. Obviously, we know what happens tomorrow. To throw this in there, I didn't have this on my bingo card, and so I think take it for what it is. It's a very bullish firm when it comes to Tesla, and they might be a little on the high side. They might be a little on the maybe not high side, but a little early on time frame. But they do have a track record of being more right than other people. So, just add into your calculations, just a data point, but exciting.
Okay. So first of all, they did not include bots into this calculation. So just keep that in mind that by 2029, they don't have anything to do with bots. They haven't yet done their complete research on that. I think that they're going to be accurate, and a couple of reasons why. But if you believe robotaxi, then you've got to add it in. And if you add it in, then these numbers they're not crazy like you both have just said now, right? Then just reminder, take a look what Elon himself has said. They've been the most accurate predictors of the value of Tesla. Now, he's bullish. He's going to say that. He said extremely challenging but achievable. So if we take a look at what Tasha Keeney says, our updated Tesla model is now out. Autonomous driving likely will be one of the most life-changing AI unlocks in history, quite meaningful for Tesla shareholders. Nick, you and I have had a number of shows where we talked about how real-world AI is going to show up as robotaxi, a real business model. So if you believe it's binary, it happens or it doesn't happen. And of course, your timing issues also, but we're pushing it out to 2029, Nick. 2029. That's plenty of time.
Well, no. 2029, to be at these values, we have to be well on our way to scale, right? We have to.
Yeah.
Scale subjective, right? What's scale? Is it 100 million? Is it 10 million, right? But we have to be meaningfully, I think, towards 10 million robotaxis out there for scale. And then we can hit these numbers. If we're just now like a couple hundred cars here and there looking like Waymo size, not happening.
Yeah. Well, we'll debate the numbers by 2029. That's 5 years away from now. Plenty of time to get to at least a million or so. So here's their analysis of what
just
they
real
see.
quick, I wanted to add a follow up to what Nick said. I agree with you 100%. If what we see rolled out is a couple hundred cars, that would be comical. That would be a surrender move. And I think it's going to roll out big when it's ready.
2029, guys. It's not going to be a couple hundred cars by then. So let's not even talk about that. So it's either if it's a couple hundred cars 2029, robotaxi did not happen. And so that's the binary move. You've got probabilities, and that is built into probabilities. Is it 100% probability that robotaxi won't happen? Or is it 5% probability or 10%, right? That's what this is.
Yeah, and that's why we should talk about it, because it is part of this Monte Carlo effect. What if
It's
it
a
doesn't
probability.
happen? Yeah, and she talks about that $350 price target if autonomy doesn't happen.
Doesn't happen. Okay, so let's take a look at if 2029 robotaxi does happen. This is what's going to change the Tesla's business. This is their table. It says that by 2029, 63%, the green, is going to be robotaxi. The orange, the gray, beige is energy, and then the blue is electric vehicles. So electric vehicles becomes 26% of revenue for Tesla at a $1.2 trillion revenue at this point. Then you've got EBITDA, you've got the enterprise value for Tesla, almost 88% of it will be robotaxi. So it's again, Elon's statement, don't invest in Tesla if you don't believe in robotaxi, right? Because otherwise it's just the car company. We'll go through some more of this in more detail, but I just want to show the graphs first, and then we'll come back and break down everything she said about it. This is the autonomous miles, the run rate compared to anybody else out there. So if anybody tells you that there's competitors out there, just keep this in mind. Baidu themselves is considered to be the leader, ahead of Waymo, ahead of Cruise. And in fact, they have double the miles. I don't know if you can see it because it's so small here. And they have 200 autonomous vehicles out. They plan to be 1,000, and yet they their general manager for autonomy has suggested that they would partner with Tesla. Why would they say that if they don't feel that we're heading this way? So let's break down some of the points that they made here. So the bull case, autonomous ride hail revenue in the bull case for 2029 is estimated $951 billion. So if this works, the bull case, we're close to $1 trillion of revenue, bull case. FSD 12 transitioned to a neural network, making Tesla's full self-driving model 5 times safer than human driving Teslas. So that's a number that they just threw out there, I guess, so 5 times safer. In ARC's expected value case, Tesla's vehicle production is projected to increase by 45% per year through 2029. So even with that, the FSD just takes over. And then they said that the licensing of FSD to software to one automaker, but it's unlikely that that's going to impact revenue or earnings within the next 5 years. That's pretty incredible. And I guess the reason is it does take at least 3 years for a very eager automaker, as both Elon and the executives have said, an eager automaker will take 3 years for them to even implement it. So that's probably true. Tesla's plans to offer distributed AI inference as a service and Dojo training as a service are outside their 5-year investment horizon. So these are the bots, AI, and Dojo still outside 5 years. Again, just very that's conservative. Price target for Tesla in 2029 is based on Monte Carlo, covers possible outcomes. So yeah, what's your thoughts on what you just read there?
I'd say it also includes impossible factors. Possible, yes, impossible as well. If for some reason Robotaxi doesn't roll out meaningfully in the next 2.5 years, their bull case gets harder to come true. We have seen such huge improvements between FSD version 11 and 12 that it's hard to imagine that this won't be solved by 2030. But I've seen enough in the past that led me to believe it would be solved before now. And so have all the other manufacturers. Cruise and Waymo were just sure they had it done, that they were in the last mile, and they are, but they're broken down on the side of the road and they can't move. So I don't know. It is, to me, it is beyond the horizon. But every bit of execution I see between now and then is all still good. It's all still positive. I had someone ask me, why is, Herbert so excited about Tesla stock when over the last 3 years it's just been flat? And I said, because over the last 3 years, the execution has continued to improve. The numbers look better and more exciting than ever. The new product roadmap we're seeing is enough to make you excited by itself. If any part of that comes true, it's exciting. Regardless of what the market thinks in the short term, the market is only so good at predicting. Eventually, the execution is all that matters. When the price to earnings ratio gets to the point where it can no longer be denied, it won't be. There were a lot of analysts who refused to model in the stationary storage revenue or any value for it because the revenue was insufficient. Well, now it's, by the time some of them included it, it was already at billions. And they just were like, well, I guess we'll model it a little bit. The most analysts are so far behind the curve that it's ridiculous. They're trying to drive forward by watching the rearview mirrors, by watching the side mirrors in the rearview mirror. And if you do that, you're going to miss every curve in the road ahead of you. So I think while ARK Invest might be a little out there, I think the more conservative analysts are just as far out there in the other direction.
Okay, Nick, you and I have been talking about this. You've been very bullish about FSD. You think actually that they're going to roll it out sooner. You said they can roll it out now if they wanted to. So you're kind of in that end, right? To explain your thinking, and then we'll go through more of our ARK Invest research.
Yeah, let me contextualize what I've said several times. If Tesla had to, if they needed to, I think they could roll out Robotaxi right now. They would obviously have to put some, bumpers around, use little heuristics to, avoid this, avoid that, go here, don't do that. But the functionality's there already, in my opinion. You'd have to allow it to be able to back up. We know it can back up, right? It's just they're gatekeeping a lot of things right now intentionally. So that's what I've said. 8.8. I don't think that on 8.8, boom, we have robotaxi service and all that. I think on 8.8, we understand when we can expect it. The most optimistic side of me is that they'll give us a certain quarter, but we'll see. I do think that we are going to get there a lot faster than what most people think, even in the community, mainly because I think they're already doing it. I think they're already testing it internally. I know we've seen the apps and stuff. I don't think you just have an app just to have an app. I don't think you have these cars out there with very strategic placed cameras for no reason. It just makes it seems very kind of logical for me that you would start with internal QA teams that are going to experience this as a robo taxi. You obviously have a safety driver there, but you experience it, you iterate on that, and then eventually you open it up to kind of a beta group, and then you slowly roll it out. There's no reason to think they wouldn't follow the same pipeline that they have with FSD. It's literally the same thing, right? Maybe they even use beta testers or people who have FSD or bought it outright to be Uber style drivers for a beta 2 months just to see and learn and figure out the things that we don't know yet, that you don't learn unless you're actually a robotaxi. There's lots of opportunity, but I think I'm hoping 8.8 we learn more about it.
Okay. Let's continue some of research from Ark Invest. So they're talking about
Brian, you're muted. Sorry.
Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. So I was going to say real quick that I agree that FSD today is not ready because they're trying to make it universal instead of trying to fit it. If they said we're going to make it, forget Chuck's unprotected left turn, no unprotected left turns, just turn right and find another path. If they were to do that with all the edge cases, it would be solved today. But they don't want that. They want a real universal solution, and that would make it work. Thank you sorry about the mute there.
You look what you just both said. If they wanted to, they could solve it today. They could solve it next year. And so what's the chances that 2029 it's 200 cars? It's not.
No.
But it depends on what kind of quality they want to solve, and that's where they're at today. And one of the reasons why they can say that is because of the number of miles that they're absolutely accumulating, and they're no longer compute constrained. And this is neural nets. And so this idea that 2029 is so far away, 5 years away, and some people go, no, that's about right. Not in exponential curve model. If you believe neural nets is the answer, if you believe compute is the answer, by 2026, 27, we're going to get to the point where things that, whatever the March of Nines, those things will be solved. Here's what they said. Tesla's accumulating data at 110 times the rate of Waymo. This is like the next competitor out there. While we push back our median launch date for Tesla's robotaxi service by 1 year, we remain confident that the service will launch within the next 5 years. With the release of FSD 12, Tesla transitioned to a neural network that learns from video data and directly controls the vehicle, eliminating over 300,000 lines of manual code. This update has enabled human-like, and in some instances, zero intervention driving by leveraging Tesla's significant data advantage, which now exceeds 1.3 billion cumulative FSD miles. So if you use that, and if you believe that data matters, that's what's teaching the neural net, this is where your probabilities gets changed very quickly. If you can say, I don't think it's going to happen in 2 years, but you can't then say it's not going to happen for 5 years, because we're talking about data and compute and how much you're capturing, unless you don't believe neural net works.
Yeah.
So, what I'm saying?
Yeah. I get what you're saying. I don't agree with it. It's not just neural nets, right? There's a lot going on there. It's not like we just sit in there with some RNNs and CNNs and that's it, right? These are a bunch of different models they have. There's lots of kinematics. There's, occupancy space. Like there's lots of stuff happening on here. When Elon talks about end-to-end neural nets, he's simplifying it egregiously. Like honestly, he shouldn't do that. He should, flex the muscle of what Tesla's doing, and that's why we have a lot of these conferences and stuff. And that's when they do it, AI Day. You really start to see them flex that muscle. But and I only say that just to not trivialize it and think that anybody else can just copy this. I know a lot of people are sitting there saying, "Oh, LLMs and what Tesla's doing are converging." Not quite. But to your point, Herbert, the reason I say not quite, well, I'm in agreement with you, right? But the reason I say not quite is because you never know what you don't know yet, right? There's a lot of things that we don't know. There may be nothing left to solve, and it may just be about polishing, but we don't know that yet. We don't know what we don't know. And that may be one of the things that we don't know is that, yeah, we're there, it's just polishing. But I just say that to you always got to think about where am I wrong? And that's where you could be wrong. Okay. I agree with you, but I just want to caveat that.
To be very clear, you and I both talk the same language. Just to be clear, we're talking about probabilities. I'm not saying this is the way it's going to happen. I'm saying percentage-wise likelihood, right? It's all kind of probability. And that's what Monte Carlo is doing. That's what these guys did. Let me show you the actual table that they said. Cecil Chan posted this. ARC noted that it believes Tesla will launch a robotaxi service within the next 2 years. Okay, now what's the probability that will happen? Thinks that the odds that Tesla won't be able to launch a robotaxi service within 5 years are very low, as shown in this image. So this is the table that they showed, and it says here the percentage of the simulations, right? They use these simulations, they use computer and AI to figure out the probabilities of things happening. So it's not like I'm saying it's guaranteed. They aren't saying it either. They're saying that in their simulations, it looks like that there's a 58% chance in all the simulations they do that it turns out that based on the knowledge we have now and the input that you put in, 58% of the time it's going to be ready in the first year, 38% by 2026. Now this is the weird part, it drops significantly to the chance that robotaxi commercialization doesn't happen until 2029. This is where their simulation shows that at least they have data, at least they have a methodology. And so then you debate, do you agree with this methodology? So first of all, my argument is that this is the only methodology that works because it's based on probabilities. I don't know what other methodology you would use, straight line something or exponential curve something. You've got to consider all sorts of possibilities, right? What is a chance that there's going to be a world war that's going to stop all developments? You have to put that in. You put in all these possibilities in, and then this is what you get out of it. So it's obviously garbage in, garbage out. So we don't know what they put in to come up with this number, but it's the methodology that you have to either believe in or you don't believe in. Do you believe that neural net is the path, or is it going to be, there's a bunch of unknowns. There's a lot of unknowns, but then it's a probability of that unknown.
We can't see beyond the horizon. If we could, we'd all be very, very rich. Some of us are already a little bit rich, but I don't know. No, that is the problem. If you'd told me 10 years ago that it would take 2 billion in compute, I'd have believed you. If you'd have told me that you could spend 10 billion or 20 billion and not solve it, I wouldn't have believed you. And I'd have been wrong for many of these companies because the problem is impossible so far. It won't be forever, but I don't know which day that is. And that chart you were showing looks like the March of Nines. When you get down to it, okay, 180. Is that good or bad? But when you
180 on Tesla, I think it's good.
Yeah, I'll take it. I just don't follow it daily because all of mine's in my retirement, and that's a good place to have it. So,
yeah. So the other input that I think you need to consider is Elon's action, not just his words, his action. What is he actually doing today that is completely disrupting the entire company? He is saying we are going to go robotaxi. And you can see it in his hiring and firing. You can see it in his priority of his team. Like you said, he built an app, and that takes time and effort. And every week we hear new features of what these apps are going to capability to do. There's just last week they announced guest mode, and they have rider quality scores, just like Uber has for what my rider quality is. These things you invest time and effort in. You shouldn't do that if you're a responsible CEO of a company. You've got minimum money. He fires people because he's concerned about making sure the company survives. You wouldn't do that if you didn't know or believe that this is the path. He could be wrong, and he's been many times wrong by years. But again, it's just another indicator, right? It's another thing to put into play. So whether or not, do you believe in robotaxi? If you do, it's going to happen, and it's going to happen 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now. Lots less chance of it'll happen 5 years from now. You know what I mean? But it can happen 5 years from now. But it doesn't matter when it does happen. Things flip. So,
Yeah, Herbert, you were asking what other methodology is there? I love that ARC does this, but to me, the best methodology is to be as close to the ground truth as possible, and that's not why, but that's an added benefit of having FSD, is that every update that comes out, I get to make my own opinion based on my own experience, not somebody else making some chart with their own inputs. I love it, don't get me wrong, it's great, but to me, the biggest truth to source is my experience and what's going on. I'm someone who I think I probably am a little more risk adverse than a lot of people. Hell, I'm all in on Tesla, right? So obviously I'm a little more risk adverse, but with that, I allow the car to go a little further than what a lot of people would, or where they would be scared. And I would say 9 times out of 10, if not 9.9 times out of 10, it doesn't do anything wrong. It was just I was being overcautious. And so things like that, and seeing from one version to the next, it's just such strong signal that I can't ignore. And then to your point, spot on, Herbert. What are Elon's actions? It's not even what are his actions. It's very clear when he gets obsessive about stuff. We knew when he was obsessive about X. He went in there, he cleaned out house. It's all he was doing, all he was talking about. What's he obsessive about right now? Robotaxis. Getting there, finishing this off. And so I think that's such a good point. Look at what Elon's doing. Look at his actions. If that's not signal, I don't know what more of a truth of source you could possibly want.
I do push back when I hear people say what you just said. And I did it I think with Larry Goldberg also, when people say, well, what my own experience, when I tested this, that's when I'll know. And I push back because that's anecdotal. It's you. Having said that, I totally understand. If for those people who've never tested FSD, never drove a Tesla, they don't know what they're talking about. You've got to experience it yourself to understand that you can almost see the mind of the car happening. What I push back with is we're now starting to see Elon and Tesla share actual metrics, global wide metrics. When he proves, now this is just a statement, so we can't take it for granted, but he just said, he believes at some point that the car will drive for a whole year before you have a disengagement. He didn't clarify if it's a critical disengagement or just any disengagement, if it's pressing the gas or anything like that, but that's the metrics we need to hear. And when they start expressing, that's why I was very interested to see this ARK Invest comment here, where they said that FSD 12 made FSD 5 times safer than a human-driven Tesla. These are the kind of metrics that we need to hear, and that's what's going to tell us whether or not we're heading in the right direction or not direction. And at this point, when none of us work for Tesla, we need to trust what they're saying with a caveat. It's one thing when Elon says something. It's another thing when his team says things. And I've not yet heard Ashok say anything that is, that is wishful thinking like sometimes Elon has said. So those are the metrics I follow. I'll wait for that, right? Which obviously we're all waiting for that.
I'm not sure if there was a question in there.
No.
There's a lot of things we need to look at as possibilities versus probabilities. In the comments, someone had said that one of the things Kathy did was put in a minimum margin of 20%. If that's true, that's too high. That would skew all the numbers. The minimum margin is something deeply negative. That's a possibility, a real possibility. We don't know what interest rates are going to do. We had thought interest rates would be coming down 2-3 times this year. At the beginning of the show, we saw they're now expected to come down once this year, and they haven't done it yet. If rates start coming back down, everything can change. Different things can become affordable again. Margins can improve. Sale prices can hold steady or increase while margins get better. So there's a lot of factors beyond Tesla's control, factors in the macro itself, and they do still have demand levers they can pull, which will keep sales going, but we don't even know how much of sales the future is. These models look at it and say that robotaxi is going to, that Tesla's not even going to be a car company. They're just, I mean, even the bull case says, or the bear case says Tesla's going to be just a robotaxi company. And I think Tesla's going to be many, many things. It's going to be stationary storage. It's going to be manufacturing. It's going to be licensing of tech. It could be licensing of software. It could, even by 29, be Dojo as a service. It could be a phone. No, I'm kidding. I don't think it's going to be a phone. But it could be a lot of things that all have revenue built into them. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, let me ask you that question, because this is, do you agree with this statement that their belief, again, they don't put bots. So number one, that's unusual why they did not put bots in when they just, we right, by 2029, there's no bots, or it's so small, which is, again, another just weird thing. But they think that robotaxi is going to just dwarf electric vehicles and insurance and energy and all the things you just said, Brian. This is a statement making that if robotaxi works, their analysis and a lot of others who've done these financial statements shows that it's incredible. And the margins only apply if you're for the car business, not for the robotaxi business necessarily. That's another question to debate.
Yeah, I just think that this is a lot of, this could be absolutely correct, but I don't think anyone alive knows for sure how accurate this could be. I don't think it is knowable to humans.
No, but again, when you say something that these guys are using probabilities, and so now you're probably like, they're not saying this is for sure. They're saying this is the probabilities. Right. So you got to debate their probability analysis if you don't think that that's the case. Yeah.
I just don't think they put forward a strong enough case that robotaxis are definitely coming. They thought robotaxis would be here by now, and that's how we would get to the valuation we have now. And we got to this valuation via other methods. So I'm hopeful. I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm more cautious than optimistic.
Yeah. So do you guys, I mean, they did. They gave you this probabilities of robotaxi. So what's your probabilities? This is based on a Monte Carlo simulation of lots of data inputs, considering all sorts of things.
Again, the analyses of theirs we've looked at in the past came up with the correct number for the wrong reasons. I would have to look at the old one and see which, if any of their paths actually resulted in the output that we got. But it didn't. So, I mean, I can make charts that say anything you want. You tell me what you want and I'll make them say it. But, and that doesn't make my math correct. I don't project beyond the horizon because I know that it's unknowable. So I'm excited that they came up with these numbers, but their returns over the last number of years, if they believe these are accurate, I don't know why anyone would invest in anything else. There could be some companies out there that will 10x in the next 5 years, but knowing which ones would be, just about impossible. Otherwise, those would be the only companies anyone's investing in.
It is the only company I'm invested in. So
yeah, me too. But that's been unchanged for years for me.
It's a gamble. It's on probabilities. That's what the case is. And then, so let's go back to this, which is their comment their belief that the bear case is 2,000 and the bull case is 3,100 and expected value is 2,600. Again, it's probability, simulation outputs, right? But it is odd, isn't it? Because it's 3,100 a little too low if it really works, and isn't 2,600 or 2,000 a little high if it's a bear. Just again, right? What do you guys think about that comment?
I don't really have a thought on that specifically. I think, yeah, I would have to actually dig into their numbers and see how they put them together. But I think everyone's just making their own best predictions. I don't think me digging into their math would be a revelation, because we can all disagree or agree with the assumptions. And I would actually say that, unlike most of the competition, Herbert and I were having a conversation this morning for a video that's coming out later this week about Adam Jonas's notes. Adam Jonas has a study that they commissioned, a report that they commissioned, that's giving them confidence in the Tesla phone. And what's not in that report is not shared with us. We do not know what information they used to reach that conclusion. We just know that it's a thing that they think could happen. And so, unlike that, at least ARC shares the behind the scenes.
Nick, do you want to comment
sorry.
on that? And then we can talk about the economy too next.
Yes, I was just listening to some of the questions they were asking. Actually, I want to go back to something you were saying earlier, Herbert. Everybody always says this, that your experience is just an anecdote and whatever. Like, people dismiss it. I disagree. I fundamentally disagree. I think people's opinions and their experiences are the only real source of truth that they have to make any decisions they do. Look, at the end of the day, I can't go and sample every single city, every single place in the world, understand all that. All I can do is make my best judgment based on what I have. I can't prove to you that the sun sets everywhere. I can't prove that. I have to take my own anecdote, and use that and make my own reasoning. And so, while I think it's it's an interesting soundbite when people sit there and say that, especially with Omar's videos, I also think that it's a lot different being in the car and experiencing it, right? People are more skittish when they drive than other people. And if you're not approaching it from kind of a experimentation perspective and trying to understand the boundaries of the technology and allowing it to potentially do something, and I'm not advocating for this, but I'm just saying, if you don't allow it to, hey, it didn't take that on ramp and it's going this way, I'm going to take over and fix it. I'm the person to be like, let's see what it does. Where's it going to go? It is rerouting. I wonder why I did that. I wonder if it just missed it. I wonder if it's just maps. Handled it fine, right? But I hear people talk about it all the time, like, oh, it took the wrong whatever. Like, I got a spot like that. I just let it do it. Like, I'm just trying to get there. It's getting me there. Is it the way I wanted it? And I think with getting rid of the nag, I think people are going to see how good it really is, because they're not as, while you're paying attention, of course, right? All the caveats that everyone always says that we've been saying for 5 years now, all those. But when you're not as involved in the driving process, I think you see what it can actually do, and you care a little bit less about, like, oh, I would have switched lanes. Like, you just like, whatever. What do I care? Like, okay, yeah, I could go a little faster. But when you're actually sitting there engaged, it's hard to, it's really hard to not take over, and because you're still driving, having hands off is a little bit different. But that, I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is that your own experience is probably the closest thing you can use to understanding, especially this company and the technology and where it's going to get to. And I almost guarantee you that your appetite for what it's doing, how it's driving, reflects your appetite for your investment. I can almost guarantee it. I'm someone who's all in, so I'm more, risk heavy, as some would say. I mean, I don't think so, but some would say that. And so I'm willing to actually understand the limits of the vehicle and where it's at. And I do that over and over and over. And so I have a really good sense of where it's at, in my opinion. But that's all I got. I There's nothing else I can use. And so I don't know. I guess I just said to don't discount it, because at the end of the day, everything ARK invests in there, that's anecdotal.
So-
The miles they have, anecdotal. We don't know.
Well, so I would say that if someone tells you that the sun sets every day and you see evidence that it doesn't, then it's worth looking into and questioning that assumption could be wrong. I've seen mistakes and missteps by ARK Invest in the past that lead me to be careful and considerate and not just go all in on ARK Invest. Otherwise, I'd go all in there. And I was warned by one of my viewers that FSD version 12 doesn't work in Colorado. And I said, that sounds crazy. I don't believe you. And he said, I tried it on my car. I tried it on my sister's car. It doesn't work. I said, give me a path in Colorado and I will try it. And he said, you don't need a path. Just drive in Colorado. And he was right. It did things that were dangerous and reckless. It tried to clip the back of a semi changing lanes. It tried to dart into off ramps that we weren't taking, going highway speeds. It did a lot of things. It refused to slow down on back roads. When I turned the cruise control manually down because it wasn't reading any of the speed signs, I turned it down to 35. It's still going 65 through a small town. That tells me that if an edge case is the size of an entire state, we've still got more work to do, and maybe some of that unconstrained compute could be unleashed on things like the middle of the country. So with those big gaps still there, I don't know how universal 2029 is. I don't know if we're this close to solved. I don't know why we're buying an additional $500 million of NVIDIA chips with a plan to buy even more and to roll out additional Dojo as well. That tells me that we don't know the scale of the problem yet to be solved, but there is a problem yet to be solved. So that's all I'm saying.
Okay. Let me ask this question. I think Gary Black brought it up. Is there a coincidence that ARK Invest dropped this research today, the day before the shareholder meeting? Or is just, they've been working on it. This is something that they've been planning to drop. They've been announced this for a while. Is it just a coincidence, or is there some meaning to this?
I don't have an opinion. Nick, go for it.
Could you say that part again about Gary?
Oh, he just brought up is it a coincidence that ARK Invest dropped their research, announced it the day before the annual shareholder meeting?
No, I don't really believe in coincidences like that. That's too specific of a time. No, I think it's
So
intentional.
if it's not a coincidence, what's the reason why they would do it?
It could be for last second people who are on the fence, and or it could be because they really think that they want to get ahead of before anything happens or any unveiling, or I don't know. I'm sure they have their own reasons.
Yeah. Do you guys think that ARK Invest, because of their size, because of their relationship, they have information that others don't? Other investors, like sometimes we know that these institutional analysts, they get invited, they get private tours. Like Ron Barron, he gets private tours, he gets executives telling him things that you wouldn't necessarily hear. We've heard Morgan Stanley announce things that they were told analysts here. Do you think that ARK Invest, when they were creating this, that they've got even more deeper? Like when they say that FSD is 5 times safer than a human, when they say that this is how many miles they're capturing, did they confirm that first talking to somebody in Tesla, or do you think this is just them, outside party, no access, more than you and I do?
I would say that they absolutely have more access, both because the institutionals get treatment and privileges that we don't get as retail investors. Even very large retail investors. I know people with $5-10 million in Tesla stock who can't get an email back from investor relations. If I were them, I'd be furious. If it was Leo Koguan, does not get special treatment. It drives him insane. But Do they get additional information? I'd say it's possible because Elon likes them. And when Elon likes people, they also frequently get special treatment. So I would say the odds of them not having some kind of information that's typically reserved for institutional investors to understand the company to form their investment thesis, I would say they get access to it. Not inside information. This isn't information that's restricted from anyone knowing it, but to the extent that knowledge could be made available, I imagine they are available for that they get that.
Yeah, somebody said here, is Herbert accusing ARK Invest of insider trading? No, I'm not. I clarified that other institutional investors have had information that they were able to obtain by doing introduction, like, information that they got because they got special access to the factory, for example. So this is already happening.
Yeah, I got a point of view on this. I think a lot of what Brian said, I agree with a lot of what Brian's saying. I do think they get, right, we're not just going to get a hold of IR. Outside of IR, I don't think they get any extra information. And I don't think IR actually knows much, to be frank. And the reason I say this is because, sure, we know Adam Jonas or whatever, they meet and they tell us they met. Great. But when I hear ARK, if I'm gonna really lay my cards on the table, when I hear ARK talk about what they're doing, when I hear Brad Gerser, Bill Gurley, they don't really know what they're talking about. To be completely frank, they're very misinformed on many things. Hell, the All In podcast, they're very misinformed. There wasn't an episode not too long ago hearing what they were saying, and it's like, man. This is as close as you get to Elon. If someone's going to know, it would be them. So I think that they're pretty tight-lipped. I think they don't share a lot. And I think this is really just based on their own opinions, their own research, and whatever Tesla leaks out there, or not leaks, but puts out there. So I don't think anybody has the inside scoop. The closest thing you can have to an inside scoop would be Ashok saying, just the beginning of the end. I would say that's the extent of it.
I would add to that and say absolutely no insider trading. I would say that they're following all the podcasts, all of the appearances that all of the executives do. That is public information that most people don't have access to. Drew Baglino was on a podcast a day or two ago. I listened to it yesterday in the car. It was very informative, and you'd learn quite a few things from listening to it. Those are public statements. Anyone has access to them, but ARK Invest is unusually motivated. Someone in the comments suggested that Bradford Ferguson gets invited to those tours. I don't believe that to be true. I am an affiliate of the Rebellionaire Group, and I've never heard about that happening. And I think that I would, so I don't know.
Okay. Nick, you're following the economy, the Fed speech right now. What are they saying, and anything new?
Yeah, I'm listening with one ear, listening to you guys with the other ear, so trying to stay engaged. Long of the short, I would say that the statement that came out was pretty hawkish, and I would say Jerome Powell is actually trying to put on kind of a hawkish sentiment. The main thing that I heard was, sure, we got a good, cooler number today, but the beginning of this year has been, hotter. Things don't work in straight lines, not for Tesla, not for the economy, not for anything, not for inflation coming down. But what he's projecting is that they're scared about the second half of this year. While everybody anticipates second half of this year being cooler than the first half, we are going to be lapping last year's second half, which was cooler as well. And so we may not get meaningful improvement, and we could get, some hotter numbers. Anyways, he's trying to play both sides of the coin. Like I said before, their strongest muscle is what they say. The stock market actually went down on some of what he was saying. It's seesawing. I saw the S&P went red, then it went green. Tesla is down to 178, 77. So this is normal. This is par for the course. Dow's in the red. NASDAQ still 1.6 up. We'll see what happens. Don't trust any of this until he's done speaking. I'd say 3 p.m. on, you'll see what the market actually thinks. I will say it does seem like it's over. That's my opinion. I think it's over, mainly because if you take out owner's equivalent rent, we are well under 2%, and we've been there for quite some time. And keeping rates high does not fix that. If anything, it makes it worse. So that's my quick debrief.
Thank you for that. So this Tesla stock went up by what, $8? It's like close to 5%. It went up today. This is the day before the annual shareholder meeting. Do you guys think that that's an indicator that shareholders or investors are feeling good about tomorrow, or why would it go up the day before? Or is it the economy?
Buy the rumor, sell the news. It's not unusual for the stock to go up right in the lead up to one of these kinds of announcements. And then no matter how good or bad it is, crash the following day. I've seen people who have a strategy that's never failed of selling right before as the lead up happens and then buying back in. It's bitten them in the butt a couple times, I'll be honest. So I don't engage in that degree of gambling. But yeah, I think it's just buy the rumor is my speculation.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of everything. We had a cooler CPI this morning, which is a big deal because that forecast rate cuts that should come sooner than later, and not hotter. That's rate cuts coming is good for an interest-sensitive company like Tesla. You got people who are going to try to get ahead of what they think might be a rip higher if we get 2 yes votes. You got people who are gambling. I got a lotto ticket out there. Xander and Hans and I, we all got some lotto tickets for tomorrow. Up 50%. So, say what you will. But so I think it's a whole bunch of things. It's not one thing. It's all of it.
Okay, good. Wonderful. There we go. We covered ARK Invest dropping their very bullish forecast. And then we've got the economy. Looks like that they're going to hold rates steady for now. We're waiting to, we're listening in to what he's still going to say, Powell. And then we've got the annual shareholder meeting. These things are all going to make the stock move or not move. And then, of course, 8/8's coming. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. And then we'll see what happens at 8. And then we'll look back at this ARK Invest. It's funny that this ARK Invest research came out now and 8/8's coming. And we've got signs of robotaxi. We've got the app. We've got all this. And yet people are still being very conservative when at any, you can't compare this to what happened 3-5 years ago. You got to say what's happening today. Just throw away what you knew before. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. We do this every week. See you soon. Bye-bye.